Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Moybon. I'm the co-founder of a company called 220. My brother and co-founder Joseph is right there on the screen next to me. And we are so excited to welcome you to our new workshop, Discover the Four-Part Framework to Prepare Your Students to Succeed in the Real World and How to Do It Without Spending Precious Time and Energy Creating New Curriculum. Here at 220, we create online courses to help students succeed in the real world. We want to teach them the skills that actually matter so they can thrive in work and in life, no matter which path they choose. We do that primarily with high school and college students, and we do that with schools, after-school programs, nonprofits, and community organizations all over the country. And because we get to work with those organizations, we know how hard 2020 and now kicking off into 2021 have been for education in general, especially for students who have struggled with the constantly changing schedule and going all virtual, and then for some switching to a hybrid, maybe into in-person and then back to hybrid or back to all virtual. It's been a lot, and that has made it really hard for students to stay engaged. It's made it hard for them to stay motivated. It has presented a lot of challenges, and because it's presented challenges for students, it's required a lot from educators and anyone who works with youth to try to pull and tug and keep them engaged or even get them to show up, let alone have them stay committed and be really excited about their classes, school, or the after school or youth program they're involved in. At the beginning, we were all thinking, well, this is brutal. This pandemic has made education brutal, but if we can just get through these next couple months, once everything gets back to normal, everything will be fine. But now, even with maybe the end in sight in 2021, we're now left wondering, is it going to go back to what normal was before? What even is normal again? And the reason we know all of this is because we have heard from the people we work with and people we don't already work with all over the country, educators, teachers, youth workers, after-school program workers who are stressed out, burnt out, wondering how they can get their students engaged again. And for a lot of the partners that we already work with, they were asking us for some trainings, so we put one together to try to help them navigate this pandemic and get their students engaged again. And we were so excited by the responses we got, by the feedback we were getting from students and educators, and seeing how these strategies were actually working, that we didn't want to just limit it to the people that and programs that we already work with, because we know this is a problem that everyone is going through in education. So that is the training that you're going to be a part of today to help you navigate this uncertainty during the pandemic and help re-engage your students, reignite motivation in your staff, and get back to those awesome program and classroom outcomes that you're used to and that you want to provide for your students. So what you're going to learn today is how to teach your students that time is our most precious asset. This is the foundation of any motivation, any intrinsic motivation, which is the most important kind, to ignite inside of your students to get them back to their normal routine and able to overcome any challenges or differences or obstacles that they're facing. We're going to give you some new ways to engage and excite your students so that they can get excited about their future and actually use that motivation connected back to what they're working on right now. We're going to give you some activities that you can use with your students and even with your staff and yourself that'll help boost motivation and morale. And we're also going to give you some tools to create clear-cut action plans so that you can not just have this exciting motivation and then let it go to the wayside once all the minute details and day-to-day gets back, but actually have clear-cut action plans connected to tangible goals in personal, professional, and organizational goals for students, staff, and the organization, and for you. And we really value your time, so we're about to dig in. I did want to mention that we're going to give you a free gift if you stick around to the end. There are these plug-and-play worksheets that we're getting great feedback on that align with all of the content we're going to go through today. So if you stick around with us until the end, there'll be free worksheets that you can use as soon as this workshop is over. You can start using this with your students and in your program. So here at 220, we believe that education is not one size fits all. It can't be with the wide variety of student personality types, of their preferred learning methods, and just their unique talents, gifts, strengths, and interests that they have. Every student has something unique and beautiful that they can contribute to the world. But if education is one size fits all and there's only one path for every student, then not every student is going to be excited to go down that path, and not every student is going to make it. And so we partner with visionary organizations and educators all over the country who share our beliefs. And we want to stop right here just for a second and make sure that we don't waste anyone's time. So this training may not be for everyone, and it may not be for you if you work with elementary school students. There are some tips and strategies that you can pull out of this and use, but most of the content is a little bit more advanced and geared towards late middle school, high school, and college students. So if that is you who works with elementary school students, we don't want to waste your time if this isn't going to be something that's helpful. This training also may not be for you if you think the status quo education system and one path is the right way for every single student. It may also not be for you if you are in the late stage of your career with teaching or educating and you're getting really close to retirement and you don't have the energy to implement new programs or try new activities with your students, if you're okay with what you're already using. And if you think that college is the only path for every single student, this may not be the best training for you. But if you're still here, then we want to make sure that you're in the right place. And you're in the right place if you've ever worried that you're not making enough of an impact on your students' lives. And that goes especially even more so during the pandemic because of the challenges we talked about before with student engagement and motivation. But because you're an educator, because you care, and because you're here taking a training on your own time to make sure that you are doing everything you can for your students, we think that you are worried about the impact, not just because maybe you're not having the impact at all that you want, but you even want to take that to the next level. And so we're going to talk about ways to do that today. You're also in the right place if you're wondering if there's a better approach to engage and motivate your students. Again, with the pandemic, it's been even more challenging, but maybe even before then you were wondering about this. Maybe you had a single student that you can think of that comes to mind, or a smaller group or subset of students that just were always a little bit disengaged or not excited or really quiet or didn't want to participate in your class or program. We're going to talk about strategies that can work for even those tougher to work with students. And you're also in the right place if you feel like the program or the classroom content you're working with is just a little bit outdated. Maybe it seems a little bit boring, or the examples are from a long time ago and it's just not as relevant for today's student. We're going to talk about ways to personalize the content and meet students where they are, so that even if you're using some of those older examples and older programs, you can infuse some of these new examples and activities and make it something that actually engages and excites students. And you're also in the right place if you're feeling too busy or burned out to change or create new programs or curriculum. I think this speaks to how a lot of educators are feeling. At least we know the ones we've talked to and heard from are really burnt out from all of the tugging and pulling that they've had to do to try to get students engaged and motivated and doing what they're normally doing in their classroom or after school program. So we're going to talk about the activities that you can infuse, again, without having to create brand new curriculum. You can infuse these in the programs or in the activities that you're already doing. Before we dig into the main content of the presentation, I did want to back up for a second and quickly give you a little bit of background on the 220 story and how and why Joseph and I started this company. So 220 stands for second to none. You get it? So 220 is a really important concept for us. Not only does it guide what we do internally as a company, but the main purpose of our company is to help every single student create their 220, which again stands for second to none, life. We want to give students the tools, resources, courses, and guidance that they need to bring out their unique strengths and talents and design their life in a way that excites them. We want them to define success on their terms and create their 220 life. So for us, this journey started a long time ago, obviously, because we're brothers, so we've known each other for a long time. But I would say the beginning of the 220 story really started in high school. And this was when Joseph and I discovered our passion for entrepreneurship. And we have to thank our dad, who's pictured there on the screen. He was really good about encouraging us to think outside the box about what is possible for our lives and our careers. And he was having us exposed to concepts that most teenagers aren't thinking about. Things like passive income, books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, having us invest our own money inside businesses that he and my mom were invested in. And just the main concept he really wanted us to grasp was that there's not just one path. It's not just high school to college to career. You can carve out your own path, and entrepreneurship could be a part of that. He had an entrepreneurial spirit, and actually other people in our family had that. And that just clicked with us. So we knew back then, at some point, we want entrepreneurship to be a part of our lives, and ideally we would love to start a company together. And although we were really excited back then, there was really nothing in high school that was going to basically take that excitement and say, okay, well, if you're excited about entrepreneurship, let's help you start a company now. Let's make all your classes go through an entrepreneurial lens. Let's do everything we can to use that excitement and get you excited about learning and teach you the skills you need to make that happen. We actually ended up going on the traditional path like everyone else because that's what everyone else around us was doing, and that's what was communicated as success to us. And so we went to Indiana University, graduated from the business school, and then got great jobs in banking and consulting up in Chicago. We were making great money. By all traditional definitions of success, we were successful, except we still felt unhappy and unfulfilled because there was this huge passion inside of us that we hadn't been able to explore. And we realized that it was because we were following everyone else's definition of the traditional path and what success looks like. And so what we wanted to do was create the programs and courses that we wish we would have had growing up to help students avoid our mistakes and start earlier on the things that really excite them, incorporate that into their learning and skill development so that they can go into careers and create lives and create their own path that just lights them up and excites them. So we left those jobs in 2015, and it wasn't necessarily, a straight line to hundreds of organizations and thousands of students. That actually took a little time. We actually started as a one-on-one coaching program. That really didn't work out. But we started to take that same content we were using one-on-one with students, and then we used it with groups and did some group workshops with schools and after-school programs. And that's when it started to resonate a little bit more. It still took some time, though. We didn't pay ourselves a salary for the first year and a half. Joseph actually had to do some Uber driving to make ends meet. But eventually, as we started to see these incredible results that students were having from these programs, which were basically generated by the lessons learned along the way from us, we were getting so excited and we were starting to gain some momentum. And eventually, we really started to pick up on group workshops and longer term in-person coaching for students through groups and organizations. And very early last year, we took all of our content online, and it was right before the pandemic. And so our reach and impact just exploded. And so we're so excited about the results that we've seen. We've been able to work with amazing organizations all over the country. Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, in 1871 in Chicago, Employ Indy, the First Tee, Waggy Labs, After School Networks in Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And we've been fortunate to be recognized by the National After School Association as next generation leaders in after school. We've been recognized in a couple books and had the ability to either contribute as guest writers or be featured in a lot of the publications that you see there below. What we really wanted to do when we started 220 was address this frustration that we had, which was growing up, we felt like the most important things we learned all came from outside of the classroom, from our parents and from extracurriculars or things and subjects and materials that we explored outside of the classroom. And this goes into a larger problem that we're still dealing with in society today, which is we're led to believe that college is the gatekeeper for success. If you want to be successful and get a high paying job and be able to support a family, you need to go to college and graduate so that you can have the skills needed to get a high enough paying job. So by that translation, that means that if we can just get kids to graduate, right? If we can get them to graduate high school and get them into college, everything will be fine from the K-12 side, right? And then if as colleges, if we can just get them hired, right? Or actually, unfortunately, a lot of colleges don't even focus on that nearly as much as they should. But even the good ones that do, if we can just get them into a job, everything will be fine. That sounds good, right? Except when you look at stats like these, you realize that what we're doing just isn't working. 74% of young adults feel that school failed to fully prepare them for the real world. Only 3 in 10 employers think that the same thing, that students are actually prepared once they enter the real world. And you look at that, just get them to graduate. When we think from the K-12 side, if we can just get them there, you look at these graduation rates, over 50% of Hispanic and Black students will not graduate from college in 6 years, not just 4 years, 6 years. That's just not good enough. So what's actually happening here? Education just can't be one size fits all for the reasons I mentioned before. Students have too many diverse talents, unique strengths, passions, and styles of learning that we can't accommodate them all in an education system that is from the industrial age when we are now in the 21st century. And I mentioned how colleges are still the gatekeepers. We have to revolutionize the way that we educate students and diversify our definition of what success and the path to get there looks like for each student. If you feel like your students are struggling or aren't reaching their full potential and you're not having the impact that you want, just please know that it's not your fault. You are part of a system that is broken. We know everyone who does this kind of work has a selfless attitude and a visionary attitude for helping people and shaping the leaders of tomorrow, but eventually you get muted and forced into situations where you can't be nearly as creative as you wanted to, and you get forced to teach the test or follow a strict program that was a legacy program that's been there for a really long time that you can't be innovative in. And so just know that it's not your fault. The system is broken, but we want to do some things together that can help start to reverse this trend and get more students on the path to creating their 220 life. So now we're going to get into the main content of the presentation, the 4-part framework. It goes time, so how to teach, again, students that time is our most precious asset and how that can help motivate any student. How to unlock passion inside of students and help them discover what their passions are. We're going to talk about the importance of vision and helping each student create an unrealistic vision for their life. We'll talk more about what that means. And then how students can take action and how to create the action plan around that so that that long-term vision actually turns into near-term tangible goals that they can focus on, accomplish, and get excited about. So number 1, time is our most precious asset. True or false? I want you to just think about this. I know I have definitely been guilty of it. During this pandemic especially, have you said at least once something like, oh, I can't wait until this day is over. I just need to wait this week to be over. Or the holiday break. I need to get to the holiday break and everything will be fine. Like I said, I know I've done it, and I have done that even outside of the pandemic when things were really good, or maybe I just had a bad day or something was stressful. What we don't realize that we're doing, though, is we are wishing away the part of the limited time that we have on this earth. We all only have so much time. There's a beginning and there's an end, and oftentimes when you get in the day-to-day or you get frustrated or have tough things going on, you forget that. And we know that happens to students all the time where they're just trying to get to the weekend or get to the end of the day. But the problem again with that is we're wishing away part of that limited time. And one of the ways to actually help ourselves, this works, we get great reactions all the time from educators as well as students with this exercise. one of the really powerful ways to unlock this perspective that we all know we need is to look at the time we get in our lives in pictures. And this assumes a 90-year life, which I think a lot of us would sign up for today. 90 years on this earth would be great. We always mark it off in terms of students. So we're looking at about 18 years on this diagram. But if you look at that in years, it's still pretty staggering. I mean, there's 10 rows there, but that still just doesn't look like a lot. It fits so neatly and succinctly on that slide. So it can be pretty powerful to see it this way. And you think about it not just in years, but in other things that happen every year. You could think about it in seasons like winters or birthdays, or anything that happens every year can be another powerful way to just flip that and think about the limited time that we all get. And then you start to get into things that only happen every 2 years or every 4 years, and it really starts to get pretty crazy when you think about the number of Olympics you're going to see. You can go by just winter or just summer or summer and winter, but it's still pretty staggering. Or you think about something like every 4 years, presidential elections. It's really not that many that you actually get to vote in, or the presidents that you get to see in office. And this one always gets me the hardest. This one is pretty crazy, I think, for me, mostly because I don't live in the same city where I grew up, where my parents still are. But what this says is by the time you're 18, when you graduate, you have spent 90% of the in-person time you're going to spend with your parents over your whole life. So by the time you're 18, that has already covered 90% of the in-person time that you're going to get with your parents. There may be slightly up, variables like up and down, but 90%, that is astounding. And so these diagrams are really just designed to get us out of that mindset where we're just wishing to get to the end of the day, the end of the week, or the end of the month. And especially, like we said, during this pandemic, it's so easy to do that because we just assume that once we get back to normal, a lot of the things that we're missing or that we want to go back to the way they were, everything will be fine. And what we need to realize is, even though things are tough right now, this pandemic is part of that limited time that we get. We can't change what's going on, but what we can do is change how we think about it, change our actions, and still make the most of this time right now. Because in some ways, there are more opportunities because of things we can't do. There are more opportunities to move ourselves and our goals forward and do that same thing for our students. And this concept, I think that's really powerful, is from one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, who says, well, you choose a live time versus dead time. Think about dead time as that time stuck in your long commute in the car to work and you're stuck in traffic, or you're waiting way longer in the doctor's or dentist's office waiting room than you thought. So you're just trying to kill time. You're looking on your phone, you're playing games. Will you choose that to be dead time? Like this pandemic, will you choose to just go through the motions until it's over? Or will you choose it as a live time? Time where you can, instead of just wasting time on your phone or being frustrated in the car, listen to a podcast that's going to help you build new skills or get you super excited or just really grateful about the time you have on this earth and the opportunities that you have in front of you. Are you going to take the time to read an article or do something productive, or call a family member or call a loved one or call up a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time and make the most of this limited time that we have all on this earth, and not change the way we do that just because there's a pandemic going on? So that can be a really powerful way to help even students. We've seen the reactions realize that their time on this earth is limited, and it really helps them pay attention and say, okay, wow, I really need to think differently about how I'm spending my time and how I'm wishing it away. Once we do that, the second step is to help unleash your students' passions. And the way that we do that is we have to ask some key questions and help get them to a place where they're not just trying to figure out if they already have a passion, but actually explore it and get into it and try it and fail. And we'll talk about that more in a second. This concept, I think, is really powerful. And this quote from one of the most incredible entrepreneurs and innovators of our time, Steve Jobs, CEO, co-founder of Apple, who said that you have to be burning with an idea or a passion or a problem, or want to right a wrong, because if you're not passionate from the start, you'll never stick it out. The reason that's true is because whether we pick a big goal or a small goal, or a goal that we're passionate about or that we're not passionate about, or a path that we're passionate about or not passionate about, there are going to be challenges. No matter how easy you choose it, there are going to be challenges and setbacks, things you didn't expect, and things you're going to have to change and be flexible on to get there. You need passion to have the creativity, the motivation, and the persistence to push through these obstacles, because otherwise that'll be just like any other goal you can think of that you've tried and haven't stuck with, because the motivation wasn't there, the why wasn't really there, and you didn't have the strategies, which we'll talk about later in the training, to make it happen. But so much of what you need comes from needing that passion and exploring your interest and curiosity. And we need students to think about this as not something that they're born with or that it just comes to them naturally. Those are interests. But the way we turn interests into actual passions that we can use, develop those into skills that we can use in a career that excites us, is that we actually have to dig into it. We have to read, we have to listen, we have to work and try and fail and get into it to see if it's actually something that could turn into a passion, or it's just something that should maybe be an interest or a hobby. Think about something that you're passionate about, that where you just lose track of time doing, or you do on your free time automatically on your own. Like for me, I know I've got a lot of passions because this is a topic I study a lot, and it's just been something that I've always wanted to explore since I was younger. Passions in entrepreneurship, in coaching and teaching, sports, in learning, in music and guitar. I have cooking, movies. I have all these passions that make life pretty fun, because I just surround my life with these kinds of activities in these areas, and I get to do what I love for a living, and that's what we want for every single student. And so the way that we can get them started on this journey is to ask them some of these questions. And so we want them to, whether they think they have their passion already set, or they are one of those students that said, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about, or I don't care about anything. These questions can help those students get started. And so you think about asking some of these questions to your students. On a one-on-one situation is really good for those tough students, but these can be great in a group setting too. What do you love to talk about, learn, and or teach others? What do you just have fun doing that? What do you read, watch, or listen to on your own in your free time without being asked? What do you spend money on? If you get a little bit of money, what's the first thing you spend it on? Or imagine if you did have money, what would be the first thing you spend it on? Or what would you spend money on a regular, consistent basis? What problems or causes do you feel strongly about? What comes easier to you than most people? What do your friends or family or peers naturally come to, or what do they envy that you can do really easily that others really struggle with or don't have any interest in? So these are all good questions to help tease out what students might naturally be interested in and get them started on that journey where they still need to explore, try, read, learn, practice, and fail at. But that's the only way to do it, is to identify interests and see if those can become passions. And these questions will help them get started. So that's part 2. Part 3, once we have their passions at least identified, and of course these can change. And I know personally my idea, I thought I was going to be a politician. I thought I was going to maybe be a lawyer. When I was really young, I thought I was going to be an NBA player. So these can all change, but what we want to do is help students learn how to figure out and pursue those passions, and then incorporate them into a long-term, unrealistic vision for their life. So to do this, I want to give you I actually want to take you through an exercise that we use with our students, and that you can use with your students right when this workshop is over. This is one of our favorites. So if you'll indulge me, I want you to close your eyes. So I want you to imagine doing this with your students, but I'm actually going to have you do this imagining your own life. So imagine that it is Monday morning. You're waking up in your bed because the alarm just went off. But it's the year 2031. So 9 to 10 years from now, depending on when you're listening to this, how does that change what your day looks like? What does your day look like? So for you, that may be the same job. It could be a new job. It could be retirement. But for our students, we always ask them, are you still going to school because you're getting an advanced degree? Or if you're working, where are you working? What kind of job do you have? What does that look like? Are you commuting? Are you going into an office? Or are you working from home? Who do you work with? And how do you feel about your day? All right, you can open your eyes. So that's an abbreviated version. We actually have more questions where we go into lifestyle and relationships, but just to keep this training moving, we wanted to focus on that most important connection from the last, number 2, passion, to this unrealistic vision with work and their career and where they are going to invest their time and creativity. And so once you do that, we ask students then to just use one word to describe their vision. And most students, I would say, it ranges, but I would say we get most of the time, the majority of students we're doing this with say that they were a little nervous or scared or not happy about what they saw or kind of neutral. There are some that get really excited, which is awesome. And then there are some that actually couldn't picture very well because they didn't have a clear idea of what that would look like. And that's totally okay. We all know that students develop that part of their brain later, and so it's a little bit harder to think that far out. We intentionally use 10 years because it helps students get out of the day-to-day and what's coming up in the next month or the next year or even the next immediate stage of their life. It gets them thinking way beyond that and opens up the floodgates in terms of a new way of thinking about their future. Most students have that vision, and then what we do is we go through some exercises to instill this concept of unrealistic and making their vision unrealistic. And our favorite way to describe this concept or introduce it is with this quote from Will Smith, who, in terms of an actor and his work ethic, is an incredible role model for Joseph and I, who we've looked up to for a long time. He says, being realistic is the most commonly traveled road to mediocrity. Why would you be realistic? What's the point of being realistic? And he goes on to say things like, it's unrealistic to walk in a room and flip a switch and lights come on. That's unrealistic. At one point, that was unrealistic when all we used was candles, but now we don't even think about the lights, right? We flip them on and off. We have dimmer switches. We have automatic lights. We take that for granted, but at one point, that was considered unrealistic. And what we want to do is help students apply this concept to their vision, make it bigger, more exciting, have it be a long-term goal that takes them out of their comfort zone and out of the box idea for their future, make it a big dream, because most students have been forced to reduce the size or excitement of their dream by the traditional path and what the traditional path connects you to, which is high school and hopefully college and then hopefully a career. But we want to make it even bigger and more exciting because that's what's going to unlock the power of intrinsic motivation and excitement for your students. And we talk about an invention like the light bulb that paints a picture of a gray, old-haired man inventing electricity. So maybe for students, it doesn't necessarily ignite the thought that, oh, I can start doing this right now. But what we love to do is share a couple examples of how teens that are their age or maybe even a little bit younger already doing amazing, unrealistic things because they were able to picture what they wanted their life to look like and just start exploring their passion and connect that to an exciting vision for their future. And so you have amazing examples of someone like Olivia Halsey, who this would be unrealistic by traditional standards, but invented a way to test for the Ebola virus that scientists actually use today. That's very unrealistic by traditional standards. Most people would use the word unrealistic to say something that they think is impossible or ridiculous or way too challenging. But what Will Smith is saying is, no, as long as you believe it's possible, you don't have to worry about what other people say. You just have to commit to it, get started now, and don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. That takes us to another example of Mosiah Bridges, who got his company funded at 12 years old on Shark Tank by Damon John. And Damon John to this day calls him one of his mentors. Or you have Coco Gauff, who beat her mentor at Wimbledon at 15. Her mentor happens to be Venus Williams, one of the greatest female tennis players. Amazing. My personal favorite, Flynn McGarry. It would be unrealistic for a 16-year-old chef to have his own restaurant in New York City. One that sells out months in advance, and to even get in the door, it's $160 a plate. You have to buy a ticket. Most people would say, without the names, without the examples, that those are unrealistic in a traditional sense, meaning impossible. But they're not. They're examples of using this unrealistic concept, committing to it, getting students excited about learning, growing, and developing their passions, their skills, and what excites them. And so we have some questions that can help tease this out. And on one of the worksheets that you'll get if you stick with us to the end, we have these formatted in an awesome worksheet that we always use with our students. But you can think about things like, if you won the lottery, you were set for life, but you still had to work, right? You didn't have to worry about money anymore, but you still had to work. So you should choose something that, you just would absolutely love. What would that be? What would make you excited to get up and work every single day just because you love doing it? Another way to think about that, if that doesn't work well for students, is if you knew you would fail, you knew that it wouldn't work out, or you wouldn't get to the levels of success in a field or in a type of work that you would want, what is the work that you would do anyway because you would still love it so much? You wouldn't care about failure. You just would want to be around it, be in it, be helping people doing this, exploring your passions, and using your talents. You can also just ask the question, how can you earn money from your passions? Or how would you design your life if there were no limits? These are the questions that are included in that worksheet, but that help students take the vision that they got from that 10-year exercise, which was without any of this unrealistic prompting, and making it unrealistic. So we always challenge them to say, right now, what's one part of your vision that you could make unrealistic? And you can think about that for yourself, right? What did you think about when you closed your eyes and saw 10 years from now? How could you make that unrealistic? And when I say unrealistic, I mean choosing something that absolutely lights you up with excitement. And the target is increased to be outside of your comfort zone. We always say, if you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like you're going down a roller coaster, that is what you're looking for, because it stretches you and it feels like something that you're nervous about not being able to achieve. That is when you know you're on the right track. And maybe you have something that feels like it's already pretty unrealistic from an excitement standpoint. Then we can, what we always do is challenge you or challenge your students to say, well, why couldn't you just, instead of 10 years, why can't you do that in 5 years? Or why can't you do that in 3 years? And initially that'll sound crazy and make students or yourself feel really uncomfortable. That's what we're going for. We want to stretch that comfort zone, make it something that's unrealistic and nerve-wracking from a timeline or from a target standpoint, but from an excitement and upside standpoint is off the charts. So this is fun because you really start to see the transformation in students when they say, this could be my life. Like, wow, I mean, it's almost hard to believe, but this would be incredible. We get them there, but 10 years in the future is still a long way out. And without doing this next step, it's hard to figure out how that applies to what they're doing right now. And so what we want to do is, in step 4, help them formulate an action plan of critical activities to help them achieve their goals. So critical activities are the activities that are going to most move the needle in terms of personal growth. What that means is probably best explained through an example. If you think about, I have a goal to get in shape, and what actions do I need to take to get in shape? Well, there's a lot of different actions, right? I could work out 5 days a week, or I could also buy new workout clothes. which one of those do you think is going to move the needle more in terms of getting towards your goals? You could try to make an argument for the clothes. Yes, it puts you in the right psychology, but even if you do it in your old clothes, working out 5 days a week, that is going to get you to your goals way faster. So that would be a critical activity. And it's just removing the noise and the options from what you could do by saying, if I only did 1, 2, or 3 things to help me achieve this goal, what are those going to be? What is going to make almost everything else irrelevant? And there are 3 kinds of critical activities. There's learn, which is focused mostly on the theory. We'll talk more about all of these. Practice, which is focused on actual skill development, investing time in developing the skills. And then connect, actually building a network that helps you further your goals and your personal development in these areas. So I'm going to do all of these through the example of one of the passions I mentioned earlier that I have, which is guitar. So this first one, learn. This is where you need some sort of foundational knowledge in your field before you can start practicing and connecting, because otherwise you're just going to always come off as amateur or someone who isn't necessarily committed or invested. And when you do go to practice, you're not going to know the best techniques and strategies to use on how to practice. So this is where you actually need to do some reading, some listening, some research, studying to grow your knowledge. This can be through books, podcasts, online courses, articles, YouTube videos. All these are viable things, and students should choose the mediums that get them most excited just to get them started, and then they can build on top of this other methods to their learning. But there's no way around this. So for me, that included taking a college guitar class and also going to some private lessons. And at this point, I've invested in so many different courses, and I've watched all these videos to learn about technique and building skills on top of the foundation. So this learning isn't something that stops at some point. This is ongoing, but it is the first step. You do need to get started on this learning. And once you do have a foundational knowledge, then you can start to incorporate practice. And this is where you think about the traditional skill development. So for my guitar example, this is where I'm actually picking up the guitar, playing notes, playing chords, stumbling, fumbling, but also getting better as I'm investing more and more time and getting better skills and avoiding some of the amateur mistakes because I'm just getting better. For students who are excited about writing or communication skills, this is writing, or this is when they need to start speaking publicly or join the debate team or the school play. If they want to be a YouTube star, they need to start a YouTube channel and record videos. They need to anything, if it's related to a sport or music, they need to actually invest time and practice. If they're excited about cooking, they need to start cooking. This is unavoidable. This is where that theory and knowledge from learning gets turned into valuable skills that can be meaningful to other people. That's where you can start to add value. And that takes us to the third one, which is you want to be able to start to build a more intentional network of people. This can include, friends and family, but it also includes peers that you necessarily don't know from your already existing inner circle, and for people that you don't know yet, but that have achieved amazing things in the fields that you want to go into and care about. So for me on guitar, this looked like actually just a couple friends that I already had that I knew played guitar. Once I got the guitar and started getting excited about it, I was able to just start talking to them and learning from them and actually playing with them and getting some of the best ideas for where to learn or what things to practice that I wouldn't have gotten without being able to connect with them. And that is the most sure way to accelerate your success, is to connect with people who have been where you want to go in your field. And it's not just guitar, right? It can be in finance or in art or in music or in science. Any type of field or passion that students have, connecting with those people is going to help. And it doesn't always have to be a personal, in-person relationship. Social media and online networking is absolutely acceptable in today's world, and you don't even necessarily have to have a live interaction with someone. You can actually take courses from some of the best experts in the world at the subjects you love. And that is a way of connecting from them. They're going to teach you the process and skills and all the obstacles they had to go through to get to where they want to go, which is ultimately a version, at least, of where you and your students want them to go. So then we always challenge them to say, okay, now that you know the critical activities, even if it's Saturday today or even if it's Sunday, what's one critical activity you could do by the end of this week? And the purpose of this is just get them moving, get them started on some momentum. We take that excitement from the unrealistic 10-year vision, we connect it down to something I can do by the end of this week, and all of a sudden, I've got some momentum. Sometimes, I'm sure you can relate to this, the hardest thing is just getting started. So if we can get them to take not just one action, but a critical action on a critical activity towards their passions and their goals, we can start to see some really amazing results, and we have seen that. So that's what we want for your students. So that's the 4-part framework: time, vision, passion, and taking action. So to sum things up, if you want to reinvigorate your program, re-excite your staff, and re-engage your students, what you need to do is connect their goals and passions from help them design an unrealistic future after they've gotten excited from the time motivation. Or, sometimes it is at first like a little depressing, and then it's like, wow, okay, that just means I need to take advantage of this time that I have, including the pandemic. I'm going to connect it to a passion that I have, connect that to a 10-year vision, work backwards to how I can start working on it right now, and incorporate that into your classroom, into your program, into whatever experience they are having with you. That's how we connect that passion, unrealistic vision, and excitement into the classroom. And that is ultimately how we have sustaining motivation from students, so that we're not constantly tugging and pulling. We have to help them see how this program or this class can help them for their passions, their goals, and their future. Here are the worksheets that we promise you. Thank you so much for investing this time to improve the outcomes in the future of your students. We understand that this work isn't chosen by people who are selfish. This is a selfless profession, whether you're in school, after school, nonprofit, or community organization. And we hope that these worksheets, at a minimum, will help your students reinvigorate their passions for learning, for their futures, and help improve performance and engagement in your classroom or in your program. So please use these worksheets with your students. If you have any questions at all about the training or about getting the 220 Individual Plus program or any of our other memberships or group memberships, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to make sure that you have everything you need to make the best decision for you, your program, and for your students. So please reach out to Joseph. His contact info is on the screen. And we just really appreciate you spending some of your busy day and time with us to invest in the future of your students. Thank you.